Just so you guys know, this meeting is being recorded. I don't know if you're zooming out to that view too.
This is not what I signed up for.
Um,
The theme song should incorporate the dial-up modem sound, at least in some way, right?
Yes.
Clonk, 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 scream.
I kind of thought I would save that for if somebody starts going off on a swearing assault, that I would just put that sound over them.
And then the only other like mandatory soundbite is the Wilhelm scream.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a classic that has to happen. Maybe every time I use the F word, you just dub it with Little Shiner Bock.
Oh yeah, are you drinking a beer, Alex?
I am. I think that actually before we get like really started, I'm gonna take a quick bathroom break and I'm gonna get like another beer ready so I don't have to get up in 45 minutes.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Good, because when
Alex
you
is
come back,
also
I have
celebrating
questions.
the release too, so I'm stoked to have Alex post-release.
I'm sure I was just thinking about what would be a good line of conversation coming from the day that just happened at Regora. I feel like there's going to be some good content coming out of that.
Yeah, good.
Post-release, post-hot fix.
Hot
I feel like that needs its own name, industry-wide. Like you've got
Sombrero.
release. What is it?
Sombrero.
Pink sombrero. Well, no,
Okay.
Daryl's actually talking about something else. The pink sombrero is for when you're working on prod live.
That's true. Yeah.
Bro, yes. Do it live. Do it live. I'll write it. We'll do it live. It's gotta be top 5 favorite video. Gotta be. Just melts down. What was going on in his world that day that he just absolutely fucking melted into a puddle on stage in front of like just the camera guy? That's the best part. It's not like it was an audience. He didn't lean into it. This was like candid. It had to feel weird. Bill O'Reilly. Have you never seen?
I've seen it. Yeah.
Yeah. He just
like
it was him, the producer, the camera guy, and then that was it, because it was all like pre-production stuff. It was like filming the like intros and outros and then like cut betweens and stuff like that. So it was like all boilerplate. And then this dude just the only other meltdown that I think was probably a little weirder would be did you guys ever see Michael Bay's meltdown?
I think so.
So Michael Bay, director known for explosions and high intensity action movies, right? They invite him kind of last minute. He was already at some conference or something, as I understand it. And they last minute pull him on stage to announce like their Samsung curved 156,000 pixel TV or something, you know, just some big monstrosity. And so he has no script, nothing. And he doesn't really want to do it, but they get him to do it anyway. So he gets on stage and then like 30 seconds in just completely melts down and then walks off. It was one of the weirdest things.
Everybody's got a breaking point, man. So Alex, tell us about the day. Oh, hot fixes is it?
Yeah, I'm curious.
Oh man, guys. So I mean, you know, Jeff, to fill you in a little bit, we had a major release last night. This was probably this was the culmination of 1/3 of our team's work, basically over the last 6 months. And what they were doing was they're changing a lot of the underlying infrastructure for how the two platforms that make up Regora communicate with each other. Basically, every repo we own, every function, every line of code, like there's thousands of changes across multiple repos. And that all went out last night. In a
kind of like a switchover style, like we were going from A to B all at once across all these things.
Yeah, Yeah. So we were going A to B. That we can talk a little bit about why that happened the way it happened, because there's a lot to dig into there. But we had multiple, data migrations, multiple repopulations of our caches, things like that. Launched code, had a couple hours of post-release testing last night. And a release is never done until you have the first real day of user activity on the new system. And so we had a slew of things that went on, and I think there was some interesting stuff. There was some dumb bugs that should have been caught during testing. One of the really interesting things is we had this whole use case where because we're a web application, we obviously have like our API layer in the back end. We also have our front ends that are getting served up to people. There were big changes in both the front end application as well as all of the back end. And there was a small subset of users who hadn't reloaded their front end since we released. And they also hadn't interacted with it until, a full 16 hours after we released. And so we were getting this mix of dumb bugs, legitimate bugs that we should have caught, but we didn't. And also these crazy use cases of people on outdated versions that were interacting in not a completely broken, but a kind of broken way. And so it was this crazy mishmash, 8-hour-long sprint of identifying bugs, pushing fixes out for them. I think the beautiful thing is that we must have pushed out 10 fixes over the course of the day. And, the system, it didn't start in a ball of flames, but, when things are breaking in your system, you feel like it's on fire. There was a subsection of users impacted, and, a few support requests came in, but we got a ton of good stuff out, even after the release. And so, yeah, it was a long day. Those days are, emotionally draining, mentally draining, all of the above. So yeah, I mean, I'd be interested, Jeff, to, I don't know, what's your 2 cents on that situation?
Avoid it at all costs. Yeah, hard switchovers they can be very, very difficult to pull off. That's so yeah, I kind of non-jokingly avoid it if you can.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, you're going to make the changes. It's just how do you avoid the amount of impact as much as possible. Sometimes you can't avoid the switchover. Of course, I don't know what your situation was, but man, sometimes it's take the extra time to do it incrementally as much as possible. If you do a switch over, make it the delta as small as possible. And that's about it. I mean,
did that lead to bad data at all today? Did anybody make any kind of post requests or anything like that led to squirrely or incomplete or bad data?
No, basically everything was recoverable. Everything that happened was traceable as to what happened. Jeff, yeah. I totally agree with the, avoid it at all costs. I know that's not a joke because, this was kind of one of those things where it's we saw it coming down the road, and it's the issue is that after about kind of 2-3 months of work, we wound up realizing that the team hadn't taken into account that kind of incremental step. And I think that there was a lot of coaching opportunities that were missed from the management levels of how does this project actually need to be planned out. And so it was okay, we were in my mind, obviously, if I could go tell 6 months ago, Alex, I'd be you idiot, you weren't too far gone. But in my mind, I was oh man, we're too far gone. We've done switchovers before, and we've done our best to pull them off. We can do this again. And honestly, even with the long day after, I will put my flag in the ground saying we pulled it off. I think that the new software is out. We did not have to roll back, and it is working in 95% the way we expected. And so it's the question of like, hey, if releasing the software gets you to 90% and then you need to spend a day or two getting to 100%, is that acceptable for your business and your use case? No one tell the higher ups that I said that I'm situation. We made the decision, yes, but I think that sometimes the the slow and steady kind of incremental overhead sometimes is not necessary. In this situation, it would have been great, but it's not. I don't think principally necessary.
So another thing kind of on that same line that kind of came to mind was something I've kind of learned the hard way, I guess, is version everything. So, APIs, things like that, and the things that, back them as well. And so I'm not sure what you guys did or how heavy it was, but then if you do a switch over, you can kind of support the old and at the same time. So, I'm thinking where you have this old version of a browser that no one's refreshed, right? Ideally, it would be fine because it would just be talking to, API n-1. And then, but when they refreshed, it would load up the new UI that would talk to API n. And to them, it's just like, oh, I got an update. It wouldn't be, the old UI trying to talk to the new API. I'm assuming that's what happened. I don't know if that is true.
Yeah, that's basically what happened. And I think that was a big piece of the thing I was thinking about today. And I'm curious what you think about this part of the problem, because this is kind of what gets me sometimes is, sometimes you have like fundamental data changes in the way the old API versus the new API is handling it. And if you try and think about supporting both of them, you wind up getting this like crazy rabbit hole of complexity where it's like, what if something hits the old API that's handling the data in the old way, and then the new API is handling data in a new way, whether it's like populating new fields or implementing new business logic or, what have you. I don't know. I guess it feels to me like, you have to now like build out both of these APIs to support this new thing so that you can have that like, release with both things intact, doing whatever piece of logic you want the right way. And it almost feels like double effort sometimes. And a piece of me wants to figure out a way to get around that, but another piece of me is coming to the realization that there's no way to get around that. I don't know if you have any magic tricks to impart on us.
No. The only magic trick is add another layer of abstraction.
Do we do like blue-green deploy where we spin up an exact copy of the environment and then just move the traffic off the load balancer to the new thing, and if it goes poorly, we revert back to the old thing that's still running? Or do we do it where we hit the button, the whole system comes down for a second, and then the pods kick, rebuild themselves, and come back up with the new image?
So we're somewhere in the middle right now. And, in my mind, the important thing is that kind of zero downtime piece. And it's also how fast can you get back to the old system if you realize that you need to get back to it. And so, what I'll say to that is that we have a zero downtime system, and we also have infrastructure where the old thing may not be running at the same time, after you deploy it, like it'll drain and it'll go down after a couple minutes, but to get it back, that'll also only take a couple minutes. And so it's not like an instantaneous switch over, but it is, still like something readily available to you if you do want to roll back. But yeah, I mean, I think a strategy like that is super important.
Yeah, I could tell a small story on this topic.
Yeah.
Not sure how relevant it is, but I'll tell it anyway. So recently kind of did this, and we had a system that really didn't have an API like you would think of. It was just kind of like connect to this port to do this kind of thing, and connect to this port to do this other kind of thing. And it was a series of REST APIs. They weren't versioned or anything like that. It was just kind of very ad hoc. And
Right.
so time it wasn't obvious we would be replacing all of it. I knew we'd be replacing some of it, and the front end absolutely was going to need to be replaced like that. In fact, that was the first thing I did. And so this was a Mapbox interface. And so this was the previous one was Mapbox, no GL, and we needed to get it to GL because we were having some serious drawing issues. And so essentially built an API. So this kind of the next version of the API, it was a single facade, with the existing stuff behind it. We put Nginx in front of that, which wasn't there yet. And we built out a REST API, right? That looked brand new. And all it was, a new layer of abstraction to this old stuff. And then we just hid behind that for about 18 months and built a whole new system behind it. And then once the new system was ready, we started building, the next version of the API while we're still using the old one. And we just slowly through releases, we're building this new API. Even though we weren't even using it, we were still fielding it a piece at a time. And then once we kind of had the backend new API to a certain place that was usable, then we started incrementally changing the front end as well. And there was a cutover, but it was, we were actually moving off of CouchDB into Postgres. So the cutover was we no longer supported Couch, which meant the old API no longer functioned, which was hard to do for an existing customer, fortunately, one. So that was something we could deal with. It took about 2 years to do the whole thing, and which is what I expected, but it was slow, methodical. We tried to, ease the pain as much as we could. And we're still using the older API for the endpoints that don't rely on Couch. But it's okay because it's all versioned. The code's still worthy, so we've kept it for the time being, even though we need to update it. And again, when we update it, we'll leave the old one there. We'll add the new one, so we don't screw over existing customers. So just supporting the older versions of the API as much as you can. But I think the moral of the story is we built this layer of abstraction, this facade, and that allowed us a lot of freedom kind of behind this wall to do whatever we needed to do all the ugly bits. So we kind of created the pretty part first, and we just hid behind it, did what we had to do, and tried to ease that switch over as much as possible, make that, everything we could to make that as painless as we possibly could.
Yeah. I mean, that definitely. So I guess what comes, my question for you is, as you were building out the new API, it wasn't live yet. Things weren't actually hitting it until you started incrementally switching over the front end as well. And so in that, I guess, I'm sure in that process you wound up finding stuff in the new API that didn't match the old API.
Very, very much, yeah. And there was a time where we were using both, and the code, there were some kind of nasty bits of code where it's which one am I dealing with? It wasn't painless, but the idea was to make it as smooth as possible for the customer, not necessarily us. And that's the approach we took. And so now it's funny, now that we've kind of cut over, we actually have a lot of more or less dead code paths in there. And so we're still, now we're cleaning up. Right. And so we're with a cutover, you're not necessarily cleaning up, kind of like what you had. You're going to have some hot fixes and stuff like that. It really depends. Like you said, you have to kind of weigh what's at stake, what you can do. In a cloud environment where you can just fix it right away, that's advantageous, right?
Right.
For us, it's a box environment where access to the deployed box is extremely difficult. So that, which guided a lot of why we went the way we did. So
Yeah.
Every scenario, of course, is a bit different. And then I'm trying to think, I've really done anything that big in the cloud. I don't think I have. We've done big things like that in the past, but also it was firmware stuff. I remember I wasn't a part of this, but at another company, they switched from a BSD system to a Linux system. They spent about a year or so doing it, and the customer had no idea. They just downloaded a firmware, updated it like usual. To them, it all looked the same, and they had no idea. They just completely replaced the entire OS on their router.
That's wild.
It was very impressive.
Yeah. How I couldn't even imagine how you can switch something out like that, especially if it's coming in firmware updates. Like, you need to make sure that the hardware it's interacting with isn't going to be opinionated about the operating system that's running on it. Like,
That was under Steve, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Steve, I want to have him on the podcast too at some point. He is he's an amazing manager and has been he actually just retired. He was at Cradlepoint. So he's one of Jeff and I's mentors for development and management.
Yeah, I mean, that
and it kind of goes back to this layer of abstraction, right? I mean, because the user was dealing with the UI, which didn't change. The UI was dealing with a custom user space that they had written, right? Which the customer facing side hadn't changed. And then they just worked on the back end, right? Kind of behind that wall. And over time made it so that it could switch from one to the other and everything was fine. And so, I think goes back to the only, piece of magic is a layer of abstraction.
which is congratulations, Jeff. That is the most software engineer answer you possibly could have given.
Yeah, it's not very profound. Feature flags are cool. I haven't dealt with those too much, but yeah. I think it's more or less a good idea, make sure it's well tested. But yeah, I mean, I think it was, this kind of relates to the previous story. Who was it? It was some satellite provider. This was way back, I don't know, 20 years ago or something. And it was when you had to put you had like a card that you would stick into the box for your satellite provider. And that was like your customer account or whatever. And people figured out how to hack those cards.
Yes, they did. Unlock programming and everything.
Exactly, because the satellite broadcast is a broadcast. It just gives you everything, and it's the edge device that decides what you get to see.
It's the filter.
Yep. And so there's this black market, and people were, pirating all this content, and so
for that.
But they did the same thing. They did essentially these feature flags, right, where they started in the background through updates, just a little piece at a time, and they would kind of obfuscate it too, so the people doing the hacking couldn't quite piece it together what was going on, and in the end they were not able to circumvent it or tell what was happening until it was too late. And they essentially put all the code in over time. I think it took quite a while, and the last piece of code was essentially, turn off the old stuff, turn on the new stuff, and like instantly within 24 hours or whatever, just locked out all the pirates. And it was rock solid until, they moved to something different. There's a write-up about it somewhere. It's actually really interesting, but that was essentially that. They just had this dark code sitting in there, and when the time came, sleeper cell, they just activate it and poof.
That's awesome.
It's pretty interesting.
I mean,
Like the
I think
old
a piece of it, like that story in particular, you know, the the only way that works is if you don't have someone who doesn't have too much time on their hands and isn't looking at like what's actually on the box or the card or whatever's running. I I remember that at one of my old jobs, my boss, we were building learning management software for a hospital, and he was like really concerned with the like privacy and the IP in the software we were building. And this was not like, this was barely even custom code. It was using a CMS called Drupal, which is
yeah.
yeah. If anyone knows what Drupal is, then like you can probably guess where this story is going. But he was like, how can, and we were using a hosted service. And so it was like a Heroku type hosting service. And they basically gave him these like free credits to host the website. And he's like, I want to make sure that like they can't get onto our servers and like steal all the code. How can we obfuscate our PHP so that like we can protect the intellectual property? And I was sitting there as like a 22-year-old. This is my first job out of college. I was like, hey man, like no one's gonna hack this server in AWS to steal this code. If they can do that, they're gonna steal it from somewhere else, because the amount of time you need on your hands to steal the software that controls the learning software for nurses in a hospital, like there's something that has got to be worth your time more than that thing, especially built on an open source framework too. But you know, I think, yeah, like who's got the time to go look at their code, especially if they're like, yeah, we think we know what's going on. It's running until the dead switch flips and something else is happening. You're like, oh crap, what happened?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny with the Drupal situation too. It's because the shit about the code, they want what's in the database.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, that's the code's not your problem. It's, you know, and back then I think there was still problems with, you know, SQL injection and cross-site scripting attacks and all that.
Oh yeah.
Like, those are the things to worry about. Oh man, I dug in pretty hard at Drupal for a couple years.
Really?
Yeah, I used to be very familiar with the code base. I don't remember any of it, thank God. It was, yeah, that was an interesting thing. Oh man, weird memories.
I
Went to
remember. I remember
the
before
Drupal users group.
I, I participated in some of the Boston Drupal user code meetups. Those were times, and yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy the little ecosystems that, you know, a specific tool can build, and you get these people who are like these crazy experts in like this one framework,
Yep.
and you know, if you like move outside of it, it's kind of like the conversation we were having about like senior engineering the other day, where it's like you get super deep in this one thing and then you move outside of it and you're like a lost puppy in the world.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you throw React, or you throw you know, a something that doesn't kind of like come compatible with Drupal, and most people are going to be like, yeah, I don't know what that does. It's not a module. Who cares?
Yeah. And I remember you probably saw this too. There were people at the users group where their bread and butter was, you know, like theming mostly, and the occasional kind of one-off custom module for people.
Oh yeah.
Plug in. I can't remember what they called it. But I remember they pretty much made a ton of money off kind of setting someone up and then, you know, putting a theme together, which they could do pretty quickly. And I think they did pretty well with it. You know, kind of like, you know, Word. Actually, there's WordPress equivalents these days. I never really did WordPress. Yeah, that was an interesting thing. I can't remember. I think I passed up. I think I passed up Django, even though I wanted to do Django at the time. This is pre, you know, 1.0 for Django. Like, well, Drupal, you know, it's a more mature solution and all this stuff, and I always regretted that decision. But
Yeah.
it naturally went away, I think.
Yeah. Well, it's like there's this, I am kind of a big Apple nerd. Like I love following Apple news, and if anyone has been following any of the like Epic Games and like the court case that's been going on for the last few months, like that's been
Oh
big
yeah.
the last week. But it feels like the last like 20, I mean, I don't know how far back this goes. It goes back before my time, but people have always been trying to find these solutions that can like get get the bar lower for like being an effective programmer. And that's like, you've got like your WordPress and your Squarespace and like these things that are huge names now, and like they set the bar at like a 4, and it's like if you're a 4 you can build a website. And Drupal set the bar at a 6, and they're like if you're a 6 you can build an effective website, and you can do it in a little bit more of a sophisticated way. And the market was just like, no, we don't want to be a 6. Like we want to be a 4. We want to drag and drop everything. We want to make it look pretty. And we want these guys to take care of all of the DevOps and the updates and all of that stuff, because we don't know what the hell's going on with any of that. And I feel like, Jeff, you have like WordPress, Drupal, Django. And it's like, at the time you're kind of like, where do these fall on the spectrum? And
Yeah.
in retrospect, it's like, how could I have ever known that that was going to be how the cards fell? Because everyone thought,
Right.
like, this is the future. This is what it's going to be. Yeah. And I brought up Apple because you have these Apple, what's that product called that they build? I think Shortcuts, where it's kind of like built-in programming shortcuts that are in your iPhone, and there's like hooks you can hook into in different apps, and you can build like workflows basically. And it's
I don't think I knew that was a thing.
yeah, no one knows it's a thing because no one uses it, because it's like this entry-level programming in your iPhone that is too sophisticated for the market that it's in. And it's like people using their phone don't want to like, or 95% of them aren't going to be like programming shortcuts like when I wake up, play my music and turn my HomeKit lights on and do all of this stuff. That the bar to entry is too high. And a whole nother conversation, you also need to have every single product that you own in your house be compatible with some proprietary product, which you're going to be out 10 grand before you can make a really, really cool shortcut.
Alex, that link that I just sent over, is that the right link?
I think it is.
Is that what you mean?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is, Jen.
So I actually don't know anything about this. Do you have a synopsis for what's going on there?
Yeah, I haven't used this.
Looking at it now. Okay, so shortcuts, actions, and then automation is the buzzwords they use.
Jeff, you're familiar with like
in this Epic Games?
Oh no. So the Epic Games, that was a
yeah.
lawsuit. Yeah, that's a little different.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, that's what I was referencing.
Oh, yeah,
sorry. I went in 2 different directions without explaining myself very well. I'm an Apple nerd, and Epic Games is a big thing in the news that like maybe we can talk about a little bit later. There's also this thing Apple does called shortcuts. Which
I gotta take a work call. Hold on.
Jen, maybe you and me can talk about shortcuts.
I was about to say, you and I can talk about that Apple thing because I'm a gamer and so I'm all over that.
Yeah, tell me about the Epic Games thing. I haven't been tracking that because I've been tracking the SEC Ripple case on the crypto side of the world.
Daryl, do you wanna take the intro to Apple v Epic Games?
Mouthful of burrito. You take this one.
Okay, so Jen, the crux basically what happened is about 6 months ago. Don't call me out if I'm wrong. Don't send me emails. The crux of it is that one of Apple's rules in the App Store is that if you take in-app purchases for a software-based product, that you need to use Apple's payment system. And one of the gotchas of Apple's payment system is that you need to pay them 30% of every transaction that comes your way. Now, obviously, if you're a Facebook or a Netflix or something like that, that turns into hundreds of millions of dollars, similar to Epic Games. And so no one wants to do that. And there's so the court case is Epic released a software update where they put in a credit card form into their app. And this was for Fortnite. And Apple took Fortnite off the App Store for like 2 weeks
Because it was going
until,
around it.
yeah, until Epic pushed a software update that took the credit card form out. So now the lawsuit is all about basically, does Apple hold a legal monopoly on this thing that is the App Store, which, you know, originally started out as like this very proprietary Apple thing, but now it's an ecosystem that you have hundreds of thousands of developers contributing to every year as well. And so the question is, like, does Apple have a monopoly that needs to get broken up by the US government on payments in the App Store? And I think that the way the court case is kind of falling out is Epic doesn't really have any legal footing to break anything up. Apple's not really going to need to change anything probably from a legal standpoint, but through a bunch of like legal discovery, through a bunch of the court proceedings, there's been a lot of backlash in the Apple developer community because the internal emails in Apple and the messaging coming out of the lawyers is basically like, oh, developers like owe us their livelihood, you know, they wouldn't be anything without us, and doing all this stuff.
No.
And the bridges are getting burned, and like people who are the fanatics are like, hey, Apple, go F yourself. Like, I have my own business and you are not like the grand bestower of my business. And so while Apple, you know, will probably maintain this hold on, they can legally only allow payments in this method, and they can legally take 30%. And there's some nuances to that policy, but that's kind of the long and short of it. Will they be forced by the court of public opinion to wind up changing their policies? And this is the first court case that's kind of questioned that. And it's been a question in the Apple community for a number of years. Like 30% feels a little high, and it's starting to feel a little bit like a monopoly. And this was an opportunity for Apple to get in legal trouble. There's obviously been all the congressional hearings and things like that with, you know, the FANG groups, and the App Store is always something that comes up. And so it's less of a question of if things are going to change. It's more of a question of when things are going to change and why they're going to change. And the lovers of Apple think that they should kind of lay on their sword a little bit and give up a little bit, because if they don't, then the government's going to take a hell of a lot more from them, and they're going to need to make way bigger changes because regulations are going to get put in place.
So what's your opinion on it? Should they have a monopoly on that?
I think that there's a middle ground. I don't think that developers should be forced to. I don't think developers should be not allowed to accept external payment methods like Stripe or something like that. But I think that a fair middle ground is like, hey, if you offer payment in your app, you must offer Apple as one of your payment options, but you can also build out the other options. So you need to have both. And I think that would be a really nice middle ground where, you know, you could have developers interact with that ecosystem a little bit more. Mm-hmm. And Apple already has this crazy advantage of the fact that like people are using their iPhones to do this stuff. And like, if you're using your iPhone, you're going to have a credit card in there. And like the easiest way to pay anyway is through just like clicking the side button and letting it scan your face and charge your Apple account. So is letting developers build a credit card form or something like that really that unfair to a company like Apple, who has $1 trillion in the bank?
Right.
I actually hope. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jen.
Oh no, I was just going to say I think they should focus on the end goal, which is, you know, if that's collecting their 30%, it doesn't really matter how they do it. Go with the flow on what is the easiest for the developers and the clientele, rather than trying to force feed it through apps the way they are now. Totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Daryl, what were you going to say?
I hope they kick rocks. So I like Apple, but I honestly, on this one, I hope they kick rocks because I want change. So I'm real quiet when it comes to Epic Games being the one complaining. Because if anybody's ever developed an Unreal Engine, you know that if your game is successful, you owe Epic 30%. So it is super ironic that they have a problem with it when they literally do the exact same thing. It's just a slightly different wrapper. So
That's a good point.
I see. This is I disagree, and I get it, but I think it's different because if you look at engines that you can build games on, like it's not like the Unreal Engine is synonymous with all of gaming, but the Apple App Store is synonymous with
yeah,
all
with
of
every
app
app.
development. Like you
Yeah.
cannot build. Well, okay, this is that's a little too broad sweeping, but 95% of people who build a successful app have an app on the Apple App Store. And I don't think the same is true with Epic, but
That's true.
but that's the
That is
difference.
true.
One's a monopoly, one's a proprietary software that you can charge for people to use.
Touche, my man. I actually agree with you. I stand corrected because you're right. It is definitely a monopoly in one camp. And I mean, there are definitely tons of alternatives. CryEngine, Unity. I mean, Epic does certainly not have a monopoly on game development. So you are right. And honestly, I like your happy medium middle ground where it's like, yeah, the low friction path is always going to be Apple's best path anyway. So why not have that? But then have the the negative friction for the other paths, but still have the paths.
Yeah.
Alex, there's a question for you. There's a question for you in the chat on Twitch. I don't know if you have it up.
I don't. One
It
of
says, so would your opinion be to allow alternative methods of payments or to reduce the percent that they take?
asking the tough questions in the Twitch stream. I think that you can do either. I think, it's like counterbalancing weights where if you reduce the percentage to 29%, then that is not a sufficient answer. If you reduce the percentage to 15 or 10% for everyone, for all payments and transactions, that might be a sufficient answer. And I think that would be, that would be enough to keep the hordes of people who are complaining about this. And when I say hordes, it's really the hordes of developers and people building the apps to, that I think that would quiet the legal battles and the people who are kind of threatening to pull out from doing that. On the other hand, if you want to keep 30%, you need to make sure that 30% isn't the only avenue you can go on. And so, yeah, I think that both are good. And I think that the implementation and the messaging around it is really like, that's the important piece. It's, what's the barrier to entry? How easy is it for people to switch and do things? What are the gotchas of both of those situations? Because there's always going to be gotchas. So I'm going to take the middle ground. I don't think one is better. I think that it's all about the implementation of the answer.
Well played, Alex. Well played.
I don't know what we're talking about. Is Epic Games trying to subvert the Apple Store payment? Is that?
That's what happened about 6 months ago, and that's what sparked the lawsuit happening right now. Is Epic that basically put a payment form in, Apple took the app off the store, and Epic sued them saying, hey, this is an unfair monopoly that we're not allowed to process our own payments without being subjected to 30%.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's still ongoing, I take it.
Yeah, it's in kind of it's in the heat of the lawsuit right now.
Any bets on which way it's going to go?
Apple. I think that's my bet. I don't think Epic is a big enough entity. I think Apple has better lawyers.
I was going to say there's the $1 trillion gorilla.
Yeah. $1 trillion gorilla in the room.
All right, I'm going to take a quick break too. I'll be back.
Sounds good.
Sounds awesome. Jeff, are you a gamer?
Not too much. I actually haven't played a video game in maybe a year or so. I was playing, let's see, I was playing Doom Eternal for a while, and then playing Doom just kind of stopped. I don't know why. I just stopped.
I was gonna ask why the hiatus, but I
No
think you,
real reason. I just kind of stopped going back. I didn't play for a long time, and then I started playing GTA on my phone in, I think, 2014 or something.
oh
And
gosh.
then a couple years later, put GTA 5 on my PC and played that. And then just some titles like Prey and Wolfenstein and Doom. What was the previous Doom? Doom 2016. I really enjoyed that. And yeah, I don't know. I just stopped. So I don't really follow gaming news too much. Games are fun. Like,
Fair enough.
yeah. Maybe I finally got too old. I don't know.
Absolutely not.
I've found that I've progressed from like as a child playing, kids games, PlayStation, PS1, PS2, maybe that gives away what my age is as far as like those being the consoles that I played when I was a kid. And then, moved on to like harder games, Call of Duty, Halo, all that stuff. And I'm like right back to like easy kid games. Like I have no mental bandwidth for playing adult games anymore. It's like either like Mario or I started playing Fall Guys. And I don't know if you guys know what Fall Guys is, but it's
I do.
little pog guys that you control, and it's like
It's a battle
Jeff,
royale.
yeah, you know the show Wipeout?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that a Nickelodeon show? Or no, is that the game show?
Like the game show, that
Yeah.
old game show from like 10 years ago where people would be jumping on balls and like jumping over spinning things. It's basically that game show in a video game.
The video game. Yeah.
And it's mindless and it never does anything but make you happy. And that's all I want out of my video game.
I have to admit, I started like in a world where multiplayer wasn't really a thing other than GoldenEye. And then I got to a world where Halo existed, Call of Duty, Gears, etc. And I was super into like hyper competitive things because it fueled that competitive nature that I have just kind of naturally. And then now I have realized in my 30s, I like the adventure games a little better, and I don't want to admit that to myself, more or less, much less you guys, because I want to be the Twitch, the Twitcher, not Twitch the stream, but like the Twitch games, right? Like the Call of Duty stuff, like the real quick reaction times and things like that. Because there's no better opponent than a human, right? It's like the most dangerous game. But yeah, the older I get, the more I realize I kind of like them chill ass games.
I think I just pet my cat more.
My cat, my cat's here, but she has an avocado around her neck because she's been scratching up her face. Let me see if I can't steal it and find her for the stream.
Oh yeah.
This is where we show off our cats to each other.
Hey Jeff, show us your pebbles.
I got something for you, Jeff. So you said that to relax, you pet your cat.
As much as she'll let me, yeah.
Yeah. So I have this for you. I don't know if you can watch it now, or it's not very long. It's like a 1-minute clip. I showed this to Jen forever ago, and it's very, very funny, and it has everything to do with you petting your cat to relax.
Nice.
This is Muppet. Muppet took the avocado off of herself in protest, it seems like, without me knowing. And if you can't tell, she does not like being picked up very much. She is not a happy cat right now.
Oh, there she goes.
There you go. Yeah, she's out of here.
Pebbles is like that too sometimes.
There you go. Sometimes I can cradle her a little bit, but nope. That was a hiss.
Looks like you're getting bit over there.
Almost. I think I'd already agitated her, so there's only so much I can do.
Is that a bike t-shirt? Does it say pedal, but you have unscrupulously supplanted Idaho as the L? Look at that.
Yeah.
Okay. I get it.
Someone tried. This is what happened. All right. I'm going to watch this video.
Shameless plug. I'm in my Regora pullover, which I basically live in and wash once a month, whether it needs it or not.
I need to get.
Oh, don't hate Jen. It's fantastic. It's the best.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I love my swag, but I love that swag too.
Jen,
Oh, yes.
there was a whole series of like sweatshirt, pullover, quarter zips, like that whole thing about 2 months before you got here. And so yeah, sorry, hate to say, but you missed the boat on that one. There will be another round. There has to be.
There has to be, yeah.
I just want to be in that conversation. What niche swag we can come up with, because coasters, koozies, stickers, that's played, right? But I don't know, baseball gloves or something.
Never do the same thing twice. I think that's the only rule.
Yeah, because it becomes, as the company grows, it becomes collector's items.
I feel like you can do the same stuff twice as long as it's like the universal things, like a mug. I feel like a mug, you could do a mug every couple of years as long as they're very distinct from one another.
Yes, that's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of mugs, Alex, we should we at my previous company, that shall not be named, we put our employee number on it. And so everybody had their mug with their employee number on it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's like your coffee status symbol.
Yeah, so it's a huge flex every time you drink coffee, is what you're saying.
Yeah, it's great.
That's cool. I like it.
I missed the best employee number by 10. I'm number 59.
Hate to see it. You know how like hotels will skip the 13th floor? Regora will skip the 69th employee. That's for you, Daryl.
And the 420th employee if we're lucky.
Dang it, Jen, you should teleport one of those Black Butte porters over here.
Need a giant slingshot. Jeff is what, your house is 2 miles from my house, is that right?
Probably. Yeah.
So go ahead, Alex.
Sorry. No, I was gonna say, talking about teleporting things to one another got me thinking. Have you guys ever been to a tech conference? Because I feel like I've had like 2 or 3 people talk to me about that before, and I've never been to one, and I think that it would be an awesome. Like I feel like it would be awesome, but I have literally no idea what they're like.
Let's go to CES this year. I'll go with you. It's in Vegas every year. It's the Consumer Electronics Expo. Man, it's usually mostly dildos, if I'm being honest, but it's awesome. See, Jeff? He knows. He knows.
At the same time as the porn convention, conveniently.
So and they moved, something happened recently, like last year or year before, they moved it like across the street or something, so everybody was kind of sad. But there was still a ton of vibrators.
Tech conferences are super fun. I think tech conference, I think something like DjangoCon, or React, whatever they call it, I can't remember. Something more specific like that. Is that what you're thinking?
I think
Defcon.
I love cloud computing as well. Like I think I don't remember what AWS's thing is called, but I think that going to like an Amazon or a Google thing would be super cool, if not cost an arm and a leg. But yeah, I mean, I think that or even like I don't know if like something like Docker does one. But there's got to be like
They
a
do.
They do.
I think it's
They do.
happening tomorrow.
DockerCon. Yeah, I was about to say they've been spamming me with, hey, want us to send you a free sweater? And I'm like, no, leave me alone.
Oh, yeah, look at that. If anyone's like really in tune with what's going on with Docker right now, one of their last releases took the Docker Compose tool. Before you used to have a dash when you used it, Docker dash compose, and they made it native to the Docker package. So now it can be Docker space compose because it's like a
Oh, I'll die.
And it's it's literally life changing.
No, I refuse. They have to put that back. I will forever type that damn dash. Like, oh man.
You can use
I think you can
either.
still use it. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, as long as it's pseudo, I guess.
Let's see. I think this one's online though, right? DockerCon.
Mm-hmm. This year,
I don't
maybe.
think it's in
right?
person. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never been able to pull off getting to one of these virtual ones because something comes
Work.
up. Yeah. Whereas like when you're there and in it, like you've got nothing else to do except be in it. It's a lot more fun. You have to meet people and yeah, it definitely varies by con. I like the smaller ones typically better. There's like this weird, I think it depends on what kind of person you are, but like you don't want one that's too small, but you don't want one that's too big. There's always like kind of a sweet spot in size. I remember it's been a while since I went to a couple Jingle cons and they were pretty good. They were about the right size. Defcon 20 years ago was about the right size.
Man, I was talking to Jen about that. I really want to go to DEF CON. Alex, are you familiar?
No, I have no idea what you guys are talking about.
So DEF CON's
Oh.
this security conference in Vegas, and I'll let one of these two explain like its history because its history is the richest. But they have
my
these
badges.
incredible speakers, they have incredible meetings, and then they also have incredible games. And when I say games, I mean things like a dope digital scavenger hunt, the press pass that they give you to enter into the different facilities and stuff like that has some of the most wild scavenger hunt type games embedded in it. And sometimes they're hardware electronic. A couple years ago, they did like RFID stuff. Man, they do all kinds of really neat stuff. Yeah, it's incredible.
I would be afraid to bring any of my hardware within 1,000 yards of this
You
conference.
should be.
Yeah, oh yeah,
They have a wall of shame. And they have a spot the Fed game where you spot the feds that show up.
Yep,
You
they come.
get a lifetime badge.
All right.
Depending on if you
Oh,
actually,
look at this.
show and tell
What? He's
time.
got so many. Look. That's awesome. Oh, and they do lock picking. So there's a bunch of lock
That's where
companies
I
that show
learned.
up with like unpickable locks. You can buy lock pick kits. You can buy like clear made locks so you can practice.
Oh yeah.
It-
Show and
dude.
tell from
Yeah. So I don't know if you can see that. Wow, this is really faded. But this was the last year they did what would be considered like a standard badge.
Yeah.
Used to have a lot more color. Even back then, though, like compared to, a badge like that, this was pretty fucking awesome. It's also the cheapest conference I've ever been to, and they only accept cash. You cannot prepay. You show up with cash in hand, and it's all anonymous. I don't know if that's still the same way. I think it is. The year after that, oh no, I take it back. So then we had this one. So this was 13. Last one was 12. This was pretty cool. It's just plexiglass.
That was a good one.
And then
That's
I
cool.
think, oh man, it's so long ago.
Do you have the round one? Is that the round one?
I think this was the
Yeah.
first one with a embedded computer on it. So you had your
Oh man.
battery here, and you have a really small SoC up there. And if it was working when I pushed the button, it would blink and stuff. So the first hack I saw of this was someone took out replaced LEDs with IR emitters and then turned it into a TV beacon. And so they would just walk around with their badge, turning off all the televisions in the casinos.
Those TV beacons were the best. I had one for years, and every time we'd go to this local bar that was a sports bar, and they'd always have this blaring television right over our favorite table. And so we would just walk in, and the first thing we'd do is just kill the TV. It was great.
And so this one, oh, and so I don't know if you noticed, like, so this says human on it. And like that one says
Yeah.
human. And so that's your role at the conference. So if you're just a regular attendee, you're human. If you're kind of on the sidelines, like you're essentially running the con, you're probably a goon. And then I can't remember what moniker they gave the presenters exactly. This is so long ago. But this one, I don't know if you can tell, like this is an array of LEDs. So it
Yeah.
came pre-programmed. Got 2 batteries, and then you actually have 4 different pressure pads here. And then you have a series of chips. This one was far more complex. And again,
So
people
people
were
take 'em-
doing,
Yeah, they take them back to the room and they hack them like on the fly. They'll bring soldering irons with them on their trip so that they can mess with them because they know it's going to happen. And then there's also Reddit threads and stuff like that that pop up about the time that the convention's going, and people from all over the world will help solve the puzzles and things like that.
yep.
It is wild.
You can see those holes at the, so those are holes at the very top. So that's probably I think a serial interface, so you can program it. This one didn't have holes, but the dots on the top are bare. So there you can, again, probably solder in a serial interface to program it. I never did hack these. I was too busy puking in urinals.
Doing all
Oh.
the things.
And the reason that he was puking in a urinal is that he was playing some sort of trivia, and they had a habanero infused tequila, and Jeff kept getting them right, and so he kept taking shots of this habanero tequila, and then ended up
While
with
I
some
was
other
drinking a
dude.
giant can of Tecate,
They
Yeah.
mixing
still
it
do
all
that, too.
together. Oh.
Yeah, they
Oh,
still
my show
have the
would
trivia drinking games.
No,
I don't know if you can
the
see
best
this, but it's
part-
Clear locks.
you
Look at that.
also, if you won the game, you not only got the shot, but you got to kept the shot glass it was in. And that particular seminar or whatever was an NSA panel, and the NSA brought cases of NSA shot glasses. And so I kept winning these NSA shot glasses.
paid the price for those though.
And were they all bugged?
Probably.
So Defcon is like an annual parlay between authorities and technical people, basically. And so there's like kind of an agreement, basically, that's why they play Spot the Feds, because they actually show up and they know that they're there and the whole bit. And so there's this mutual understanding and respect that happens while they have one of the best security conferences in the world in Vegas.
Well,
it
and
is super cool.
And paired with it, so Defcon is, I guess you call like the amateur conference, and then there's a professional conference that's put on by essentially the same people called Black Hat, and that's your corporate version. And so you're paying, $4 or $5 grand, whatever it is, to get into that. So it's way more limited audience. It's targeted at corporate, commercial, professional, security people.
Yeah.
And then you have DEF CON, which is just open to the public, and it's a party. But there's often overlap between Black Hat and DEF CON. It's pretty awesome. Yeah, I think it's 15,000 people now. It's just gigantic. Yeah,
That's
it's
what
so
I was
big.
That's what I was telling Daryl, that because I went during the Alexis Park days, it's hard for me. I would probably still go and have a blast, but it was so small and intimate and fun before that I think I would have a slightly difficult time with the gigantic size of it now.
Yeah.
Maybe,
And-
or maybe that's just nonsense. And
No, I don't think so, because Alexis Park was unique. So it's a major hotel. It's I think a half or full Vegas block. It's pretty good size. But it's like a villa style. So you have your hotel rooms, suites, whatever, on the perimeter, and then it's all open in the middle with, I think it was 3 swimming pools and kind of huts and stuff.
Right.
And the best part was no gambling. It was a no gambling casino. And that's actually super important, which we realized when they moved away from the Alexis Park. So the people who go to DEF CON, for the most part, don't give a shit about gambling. They are there for other reasons. And So, the first couple of years, Lexus Park, like nothing ever stopped. Parties went all night long. People would like pack dye into their pockets and then go jump in the pools and turn them pink and blue or whatever. I remember the sun would go down and people would go up poolside and bring out their own personal bar setup and like just set up a bar next to the pool that they brought with them. Just there'd be a DJ at every pool, and these were people that just showed up and did it. Like they just like, this is how it goes, and just holy shit, it was just so nonstop. And then they got too big. Oh, and then they would also, one other cool thing is they would take over the TV system of the entire place, the whole hotel, and so the programming on the TV was done by Defcon, and so every presentation, seminar, whatever that was happening was being broadcasted live to all the hotel rooms. And then they also had programming, like their own television channels where they had, whatever. They just came up with programming for that year, and they'd play movies nonstop or TV shows or whatever, what they thought was related. It was just all DEFCON programming on your television plus the live feed. So sometimes you're just like want to get away from people, but you don't want to miss something. You can just go back to your room, chill and watch it instead of being there if you want to. They just had complete control. It was so amazing. And the hotel was really accommodating. And then we went to, I think it was the Riviera. And, we got there the first day and it's like 7, 8 o'clock. It's gonna get dark soon. It's like, sweet, let's go to a hotel and start fucking partying. And there's all these like employees, these security employees around the hotel, and there's no one, or the pool, there's no one at the pool. I'm like, yeah, pool's closed. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, pool closes at 7. I'm like, what do you mean the pool closes at 7? Like, yeah, it's state law. If you have gambling at the hotel, you have to close the pool at a certain time because parents neglect their children gambling and their kids drown in the pool or some crap like that. Someone actually told me that. And it's just, and
So bad.
all of a sudden it just like all occurred to me like, oh shit, like because the Alexis Park, because they didn't have any gambling, a whole swath of restrictions just didn't apply to them. And then all of a sudden we went to a hotel that had gambling and there's all the shit we couldn't do anymore. They couldn't control the TV system same way, if at all. And it was like a whole lot of freedoms kind of went away. It wasn't the same.
I was gonna
Time for a
say,
new one.
like, if you have a bunch of RF devices and you're like turning off TVs and screwing with stuff in casinos, like, I don't care how good of a hacker you are, someone's gonna come over and break your hands.
They don't know it's you. There's thousands of dudes or people. It's not just dudes, it's just people with the same fucking badge on. Like, you can't tell.
Yeah.
Who
Well,
is
and when
what?
The last time I went, there's the wall of shame. And so basically, if your devices are open and exposed at all, like your girlfriend's going to know who you were cheating with, that you have pictures of in your phone, and your text messages are just scrolling by on this public screen. It is just mass exposure for anybody that has anything cracked open in ways that they definitely should.
Screen is not correct. It was like a 30-foot projection, like a wall of everybody getting hacked real time.
It was amazing. But check this out. I don't know if have you guys ever picked locks? I know Jeff.
I have.
I've seen
Okay, so-
you show this off before, Jen, so I have a vague understanding of what some of this is.
Yeah, so this is my first set that I actually got at DEFCON. And then, you've got your practice locks.
Oh yeah,
Like these.
I got mine too. Yeah.
Yep, Jeff still has
I
his.
don't have mine with me.
And like little ones like this. And then this was actually my first jackknife set. So you can put this on your keychain. This is just a
That's
southward.
awesome.
And the little wrench comes out the side of it and then it flays open. So at one point there was a construction project in process at somewhere in Boise for a very long period of time that had a chain link fence around it. And every one of the locks that was on that eventually became mine. Do you remember that, Jeff? And then swapped it out. I swapped out the locks on it. It was pretty fun.
I had a couple
But-
friends who
oh,
got
and then
arrested
these-
climbing that crane.
Oh, I'm sure. These are double-sided picks for your cars. So
I haven't
automotive.
seen those.
Dude, Jen is like
They're so fun.
Danny
But
Phantom.
totally totally not practical as a way to break into anything because it takes a minute. You're just, it's not a breaking and entering kind of thing. It's just a curiosity and a sport. Yeah, Defcon.
Or if you lock yourself out of your house, then who needs
Yeah.
a key?
I had a 62 Ford Falcon for a while that had a 3 on the tree, and I lost the key to it for quite a while. And I ended up picking the lock to get into it and then just picking the ignition. The sucker would just start right up. Fun.
Man. I had a probe that I just beat the ignition out of with a screwdriver and a hammer. So
Does that actually work? I've never tried that.
in modern car or not, but there was a period where no, it doesn't, because they have these safety mechanisms, these safety features. But anything prior to that particular safety feature, it does work, and I know so because my '91 Ford Probe had the tumbler beat out of it, and I could turn the damn thing with a flat tip.
That's awesome.
Couldn't find the keys, man. They were just gone. Didn't want to sell the car. Wasn't going to pay for it.
I love
That was
that.
before they had whatchamacallit, it's like radios, chips and stuff in the keys now. Because now, it's all laser cut keys. There's usually a chip inside. I mean, hell, my car doesn't even have keys. It doesn't even have an ignition. It's just a fob in my pocket and a push button. So those days are gone. Sad face.
Are those, I haven't really looked to see how often those are hacked.
I'm absolutely curious about it. If you find any information, I've never actually took the time to look it up because I know isn't like Tesla C++, Tesla and SpaceX I think utilizes C++ mostly.
I'm not
No
sure,
idea.
but I mean, there's plenty of YouTube videos here.
I'm pretty sure that the car companies that are building, I don't know if Tesla and SpaceX, Elon's doing whatever he wants to do, but for the real car companies, there are like special frameworks and versions of like C++ that are specifically designed for kind of a notch above your like toaster IoT as far as like security and making sure that like the developer who's writing your car's operating system, it's not going to turn off while you're in the middle of the highway, which is something that Teslas do actually. If people, I don't know if anyone followed that news story, but
No.
I did not.
a recall on, I think, Model 3s. Again, if I'm wrong, I accept that. But the screens on them, they just reboot while you were driving, like once in a while, because of some memory issue. Like basically, like the hardware would overheat because it was long running, and after like a year or two of usage, it would need to reboot like while you were driving. And it wouldn't mean the car would shut off, but like all of the electronics in the car would shut off, which is probably unnerving if you're going,
It's terrifying.
55 miles an hour. Also, if you're depending on the self-driving feature, then that's probably a scary situation.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Oh man.
You guys saw
All right.
that the Ford F-150, they're putting an electric truck out.
Yeah.
I'm hopeful. I think it's going to be complete dog shit, but I'm really hopeful for it.
Oh, Jeff, I meant to ask you. So you and I were kind of talking a little bit about Python and GeoJSON and just doing I don't really know how to describe it without talking too much about RIP, but tell me your experiences with some of the work that we have done in the past with GeoJSON and some of the tools that you've seen that you like.
So Mapbox is my main experience as far as mapping goes. So, GeoJSON, all that stuff. Their Slippy tiles are amazing. Super easy to deal with. On the back, I would say, and I'm not an expert in this, so this is just my experience. But PostGIS is super good. If you can if you can do that, do it. I mean, it's almost hard to describe what it can do. Pretty much whatever you need, it can do. So you can, just use a query to say, hey, get me all the stuff, in this region. And if you need to make that region out of other regions through a union or an intersection or whatever, you can do that. You can define, an arbitrary space. Like we actually kind of can't describe too much, but sort of create a virtual 3D space and figure out, things in relation to that. Just through a SQL query. That's really hard to explain. I can't get too much into detail. However, you can't do everything in the database. And sometimes like you don't have a database that does it. So what we use a couple things. The main thing we use, especially for GeoJSON, is Python. We use something called Shapely. And it pretty much so far has had nearly everything we need. The only thing I don't use it for is for a Haversine distance. We use a C++ library for that, just because we have to deal with curvature of Earth type of stuff. And then, which I think Shapely that will not do. I can't remember if it will do projections or not. But for a lot of stuff, it doesn't matter. It's really not until you get into pretty big areas where you have to worry too much about the shape of the Earth. But if all you really care is doing basic geometries and you're getting it from GeoJSON for, zip codes, states, and stuff like that, this is pretty awesome. It's a little small learning curve, but you can just take a GeoJSON polygon or a point, create a Shapely object or objects, and say, give me the unit intersection, whatever. It'll give you a new one with what you want. Like I use it mostly to see if something is contained in something else. So, is a point contained in an area? That's what my main experience with that is, and that area is defined by GeoJSON. That's pretty much it. I mean, it's been good to me.
So is that GeoJSON? I'm ignorant to it, by the way. So first of all, to the subject matter, pretty at large. But I've seen some of our GeoJSON data, and it seems pretty big. So are those libraries doing like big data stuff, like GraphQL type optimizations and stuff like that to handle those really big data sets? Or is that something different?
So when you say big data set, you're talking about the shape object itself?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Yes.
But it's a lot of points.
Yeah, exactly. Because we'll
Yeah.
have like 8 or 10 megs worth of just GeoJSON data with all these coordinates and points and stuff coming through. And
Yeah.
I imagine you have to like page that stuff in and out and stuff. But again, I'm guessing. I don't know totally. So I was gonna see if that's what those libraries are doing specifically, or if they're actually doing more like filtering and sifting through it, or we're not really sure what they do.
So like Shapely is, no, it's not going to do, as far as I know, it's not going to do your filtering. Like if you have a large set of GeoJSON shapes, we'll say, I don't think it's going to help you with that. Now there is, what's it called? GeoPandas. So
I heard about that today, actually. I was Googling pandas today, and they're a library that sits on top of data that does some of what I was kind of talking about when I say like big data sets.
Yeah, that's exactly what I would look at, because then you can load, 1,000 shapes in and, yeah, what's the distance between all the shapes, or the average distance, or which one of these intersect, things like that.
Gotcha. Okay. And it's which one of these intersect, I think, for our IP at least, that would be most pointed for.
Yeah, it's my experience, that's super common. Like, is this thing in this area, or, I want to know where these intersect and what's there. Is this thing there? Yeah. I have not used GeoPandas. I've looked at it. For what I need, it was overkill. But I think if you have a lot of data, it could be helpful. Honestly, if I had a lot of data, I would try to use PostGIS and use that instead. It sort of depends on your constraints. I don't know what database. Can you tell me what database you're using?
Mongo.
Mongo. I don't know what GIS stuff it's got in there. Does it have any GIS functionality?
Oh yeah. Mongo's got awesome native support for geospatial stuff, kind of all over the place. I don't think there's a whole like list of kind of operations it supports. You know, you can have like an area and query for a point in the area. You can query for like intersection of two things. You can, you know, it's definitely not as robust as probably the cross section of all of these tools you're talking about, Jeff. But you know, it's nice because you know you can put all of the stuff right next to all of your other stuff and use the same tool for your you know, your system of record as well as your geospatial, you know, whatever you're going to do with that. I'm so one thing that's tricky that I've been thinking about as far as like geographic querying and stuff like that. We deal a lot with very very like defined areas. You know, we have like states and then counties and zip codes and things like that. And so I guess, have you had any and we use like the stuff that the government puts out, that, you know, is the census GeoJSON thing that they publish every like 8 years or something like that. And one of the things we found is like it's not always perfect and there's holes and stuff, and it's, you know, it's pretty clean, but it's not like 100% clean. Do you have any tips and tricks for like working with a data set like that and how to, you know, potentially like clean it up or tweak it to your use
Hydrate it.
over time?
I don't. I just haven't dealt with those data sets off the top of my head. If it's that stale, you know, like if the data is not updated very often, and if there's common issues, I would try to pre-process it, like, you know, pre-clean it, do as much ahead of time, one time, as much as possible. And I try to do that in general, just across the board, right? Like, amazing how much processing we do that we could do once that we do 1,000,000 times a day. So I think of that right away. It's like, okay, can you pre-clean it so that when you use it, it's already clean and you just don't have to worry about it?
Yeah.
So that's the first thing that comes to mind. Is it just like incorrect borders, like something like going outside of a county line or a state line when it shouldn't, kind of a thing?
Yeah, and the like one of the issues we run into is that like even the concept of zip codes is such this like loose ephemeral concept once you actually start digging down into it, where like a, you know, one person's definition of what this zip code covers can be kind of slightly different, and you get this like local knowledge of the area once you actually start interacting with the people, where it's like, oh yeah, on the map this might say this, but anyone within a 20-mile radius, like everyone knows that this is actually this other thing. And so, you know, we've seen situations where like the governmental data, you know, all the databases haven't caught up to the more, you know, local data that people are producing, and we wind up getting out of date because like the people who are kind of boots on the ground actually using the product are dealing with, you know, something that might have been true 5 years ago but stopped being true, and the only way you know it's not true is talking to them and like them using it and being like, this is wrong, and no one else might know it's wrong, but we do.
Have you tried cross-referencing it with OpenStreetMap data?
No. I'll preface this problem by saying we haven't tried very hard to fix it yet. And one of the reasons is just because there's like so many different ways to go with it, and
yeah,
such a big piece of our system depends on like geographic location, that kind of dealing with the devil you know until you have a really good idea of what you want to move into is almost better, because making small tweaks and without really knowing what direction you want to long term be in, at least in my opinion, and Jen, you've been dealing with this a little bit. We've had one or two conversations around this area. Like moving this stuff a little bit can be more trouble than it's worth a lot of times.
And
yeah, you
that's
just have to be so careful because
yeah.
this data is, I mean, it's so much of the point of the product that we're helping to service, which is the location, right? It's everything. So you just have to be really careful and really accurate, and it takes time. But cross-referencing is something that Alex and I have definitely talked about with, say, different APIs that provide the same data, and then looking to see if the data that we get is the same, and if it's different, can we alert on that? Can we does that become a signal for us to look somewhere else for it? We've talked about a variety of ways of getting to the point of that.
Who's your map provider?
So I mean, we use a package called, I'm not gonna remember what it's called. It's basically,
Never remember the name of it.
yeah, there's a React package that can basically take GeoJSON and overlay that on like images that you import. And so let me see if I can find it, but the important pieces of our map are, it's called React Leaflet. That's what it is.
I was gonna say, is it Leaflet? Okay.
Yeah, it is. It is Leaflet. That's where we get our maps, and then we take the GeoJSON that we get from the government database, and that's what overlays on it.
Okay. I don't know how much money you have to spend on this project. If you do have some money, I would talk to Mapbox, because they have a lot of help to offer. They will tell you right off the bat, like you can talk about this and they'll either know exactly what you're talking about or not. And if they do, there's a good chance they know how to deal with it or have already solved it.
Yeah.
That's been my experience with them. Like I think very highly of them. And they have tons of really good data.
We spend a lot of time talking with them, and their services have improved an incredible amount. They're really wonderful. Not cheap, but not crazy.
When you say we,
either.
was that to Jeff or was that to the Rigora guys? Because I'm not sure.
Oh, sorry, that was me talking about working with Jeff.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought I was tracking. I just wanted to make sure that you guys hadn't already opened up dialogue with them.
About this.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure you could even use Mapbox data without changing out Leaflet. I believe they're both Slippy based, so you could intermix the data. So if you end up going with Mapbox and let's pretend they've already kind of solved these boundary issues for you and you just want that boundary data from them, I think it would be really simple.
Yeah.
I'm awesome. I might be completely wrong. I've not used Leaflet, so I just remember I believe it's a Slippy map, which is, do you know what I mean by that when I say Slippy map?
No.
It's the way the tiles are referenced, and so I think it's zoom level YX, because everything instead of lat long, it's long lat, or so maybe it's XY. I can't remember. Anyway, the point is it's a directory structure, so it's like zoom level, X, Y, and then your tile, and which makes it incredibly easy to index your tiles and find them. And compared to, I think Google does something else that's really weird. I don't know if it's ECF based or something. I can't remember. But the Slippy map, like, it's easy for a person to understand. Like, you can, if you know a location, you can just like open up directories and find a tile. It's pretty slick. And I'm pretty sure Leaflet does that as well. A lot of the newer stuff tends to do that. And the the author of Leaflet talks highly of Mapbox. I can't remember his exact quote, but essentially he was saying, you know, if Leaflet can't do it, you should start using Mapbox.
Yeah, and
Um,
I've definitely seen points where it seems like we're getting close to that. It just depends on the level of investment.
Yeah, I think one of the tricky parts is like the map and the, whereas a lot of apps, the like critical piece of functionality is interacting with those locations. Like our application interacting with that isn't completely critical. Like it's kind of you set it up. Like a big piece of the map is like creating settings. And so you set that up and you may go in it once every 1,000 uses and change something if you need to. But the real meat of it is like in the back end being able to co-locate objects and say, this thing falls in this boundary and this boundary has these attributes associated with it. So, that means that this order is going to cost $500 as opposed to $400. And so I think that like the really the sophisticated boundary data and like that piece of things, having like really clean data that is coming from a trusted source of truth, that's the piece that I think rings like important to me.
okay, so I would almost wonder. So I think if this was me, I would look at the Mapbox data and see if they offer the data you need for free, and then compare it, right? So find known problems you have and see, are they just serving the same government data? If so, then whatever. Or theirs magically clean. If it's magically clean, I would investigate more. At that point, it might be if you want to buy just tiles from them to serve, it's not expensive, especially for what you just described to me, where you're just not pulling that much data very often. If their data is already clean, it could actually be a very low cost solution for you that I think would probably just fit into your Leaflet map. So I would probably look there if possible, because man, if someone else has done that work, that's that's the gold.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's a hard problem to solve, because it sounds like you'll probably just almost randomly run into these funky border issues, I'm assuming.
Yeah, you run into funky border issues and they also change over time. It's not like it's a static thing. We learned the hard way that zip codes will just magically get created and destroyed. And there's a certain percentage of zip codes that'll turn over like every 5 years. And so
Wow.
if we're around for, hopefully more than 5 years, the map, the way we're categorizing a bunch of stuff right now, it's gonna be totally different. There might be 5% of the zip codes we're using that have changed, that, have gotten split up, grown bigger, things like that. So it's a weird problem to solve. And, it also gets into the other question of like, what do you do with how do you make that decision for one of your users, where if they say like, hey, this is my zip code, and then that zip code changes, like, what do you do with that? How can you even, is there any safe assumption you can make about how you should change something from one to the other? Or do you need to just prompt your user and tell them like, hey, something happened, like, please take care of it every time?
Wow. So you can have a user in their system and then their zip code can change on them.
Yep. Because zip codes change a lot, like a lot more than you think they would. The Postal Service is constantly moving those things around. It's pretty wild, actually.
They have so the Postal Service has an API. I know that. You guys tap into that?
Yep.
And then
I haven't for Rigora, but yes, like I'm aware that that's a thing.
Yeah,
In fact, they'll do one address for free, and if you want to rehydrate your entire DB, that costs money. But you can do it on a case by case basis and be perfectly fine. So
okay. Man, do you store LLA or lat long data as well for a house?
Yeah. But the tricky part is so we're using Google Geocoder to get the lat long data, and so this is where you get into the cross-referencing conversation of, you know, Google Geocoder is great 99% of the time, and then 1% of the time it'll give you it'll give you the information that's like 3 states over because it just got confused. And so you need to have a couple different systems that are ingesting these like physical address strings to make sure that, you know, you're getting it as close to 100% right as possible.
Good thing. Yeah, definitely not a problem I've dealt with before, especially at that scale. Sounds fun.
Fun's a word for it. It's
You figure for
go ahead, Daryl.
I was gonna say, you figure for something that doesn't move, you know, like land, zip codes wouldn't change. But sure enough, here it is, 5 times a month. That's a lot.
So a single zip code has moved 5 times a month?
No. The post just says he alters the
Okay.
boundaries of a particular zip code maybe 5 times a month. So a single
okay.
zip code or up to 5 different changes could happen to
Wow.
all of them exclusively or inclusively. But even more
Okay.
than one, I argue, is a lot, right? Because you could be living in 77866 or 78626, and then like tomorrow wake up and be like, no, it's 7867 now. And now all of your documents are wrong. Every time you write it down, you're wrong. Like it seems pretty wild to me. But
It
does
is.
happen.
That's very new to me. And so, but so the post office data, is it more or less up to date with those things when a zip code changes? I would assume so.
You're muted.
Muted.
Sorry guys. maybe the post office API is, and I haven't worked with like that geolocation API enough to say whether or not, but the big data sets that they post, which are like, here's the GeoJSON for everything in the country, those only get updated every couple of years. And so you've got things changing, and then you know, they're like, okay, enough has changed. Now we publish a new one.
Yeah,
I
the
see.
latest update.
Or
on
you
the-
can pay for the real time.
Yeah. And you know, I also have no idea if anyone's actually keeping any store up to date real time. I'm assuming it has to be happening, but you know, local government has probably surprised us all in one way or another.
Oh, I'm dumb. You beat me to it, Jen.
I'm on it.
Average frequency of zip code change for a given address over the course of a year. That's quite the title. Is there just a hard number? Yeah, 5 a month. Okay. Alpha boundaries. Okay. Wow. Use census topology rather than zip codes. Oh, that probably just depends on their use case there. So 5 times a month throughout the whole US, which you guys are probably increasingly hitting more and more often as you grow, I would assume. How do you know what's wrong? Does someone just tells you?
Yeah, someone's just like, hey, this isn't, you know, this isn't the zip code of this house, or where is the zip code of my house? It's like, oh, I'm sorry, we don't have that one. It's too new. And it doesn't happen super frequently. It's only happened a couple times, but it's one of those things that, you know, you can see the train barreling at you from like 5 miles down the track.
Is it once you find the problem, is it easy to remedy? Like, what's the hard part? Finding the problem or fixing it?
Both, because once you find the problem, then I guess, I don't have a great answer for how hard it is to fix it necessarily, because if we just have the new GeoJSON, then we can update all of our, data stores to say like, here are the new things. We can, migrate the data in however we want. But, it's kind of a collection of all of those pieces, like finding the new boundaries for the things in that area, updating the data store, migrating your data, doing that every time something comes up. That would be if you did that, that would be the only thing we ever did.
Okay.
And so, yeah, it's, and it hasn't been painful enough yet to warrant like a really big push on it, but it's one of those things that's like been in the back of my mind for the last 3 years. I'm like, I know this is coming. Like one day this is going to be on the top of someone's mind, and it's gonna rain down. So
One thought that just crossed my mind is, would it be helpful to remember a previous data? So let's say you do need to update someone's zip code, and then also remember the previous zip code or zip codes, worst case, so you can almost say, you're probably going to have some weird overlap, I'd imagine, where it's getting referenced by multiple zip codes for a time. So you almost need to retain that history of, it used to be this zip code. Now it was changed to this code on this date by us, this one became aware of it. So you can almost have a query where it's, if you change the zip code, I imagine there's gonna be a while where it kind of falls between the cracks a little bit. Is that, am I making sense?
yeah, no, I get what you're saying. Like, and I haven't, my thoughts never gotten that well formed as the way you just put it, but I think, yeah, like having almost like versioned areas where it's like, hey, in V0 it was in this location, and V1 is in this location, and then you kind of put logic in to check both of them, and depending on whether it's like an inclusive thing or an exclusive thing, you can do with that what you want. Yeah, it's almost like the same conversation we were having about versioned APIs, where it's like, but now you need to coordinate your whole user base to like, do their thing so that you can migrate off of the old one and make sure you don't support, 50 different versions of the continental US map.
Yeah. Ooh. Yeah, that's a fun one, though. Yeah, it could get pretty annoying. I think you're right. It's kind of, yeah, as you grow more and more and more, eventually you're going to hit a pain point.
Yeah. I think the nice thing is that like the, industry knowledge, if a zip code changes, it's not like everyone in the area is like in tune to those changes on a month to month basis. It takes a couple of years for those things to like propagate out on the way things are being documented in the rest of the world. And so there's got to be some sweet spot where it's like, all right, if we're doing this every like once a year or something like that, that has to be more than enough. Or like once every 2 years, maybe that's enough, as opposed to like trying to stay in hyper in tune with all of the changes.
Right. There's got to be someone else who's dealing with this. Dang.
I keep telling myself that.
Yeah, it's not me.
We have a level of abstraction there, because then we also are considering keeping up with county lines, and they redraw those occasionally as well from time to time. So the zip code can change what counties are inside it, right? Because the zip code can change. And then also, if the county gets gerrymandered, they can call it whatever they want. Now, we have the same problem, but coming from the other side. So it seems like a moving target.
Yeah. It's a very slow amoeba. That's what you can call the solution, just slow amoeba.
Amoeba.io.
That'll be the name of our microservice. The Amoeba.
That must already exist, right?
Oh, sure. But it's in your infrastructure, so you can name whatever you want. Alex's background is making me hungry.
This was
What is that?
it's nachos.
All right, I'll play you a little game. Did you take that picture?
No, I
Okay.
got it off Google Images like an adult. This is one of the two backgrounds that I have. Sometimes, so I feel like we could spend a whole 2-hour session talking just about like Zoom and web conferencing software. Zoom, every now and again, you know how they have like the default backgrounds? Sometimes they don't give me the default backgrounds when I go and look at my virtual background. They only give me the custom ones that I've uploaded. And that's either a very blurry picture of the old office that we used to work in the Boston Seaport, or it's this plate of nachos. And so I picked the one that I felt more akin to right now, you know?
That's great.
In my mind, I just assumed you took a picture at lunch one day and was like, yeah, look at these badass nachos. And you just had that forever.
I mean, if I did make these, that would be pretty badass.
It's a very
Look
organized
at
set
them.
of nachos. It's the most organized nachos I've ever seen. So
Well, they're clearly extremely photoshopped. None of this food is actually sitting on top of each other. It looks like, if you look closely enough, the
that's funny.
like avocado, the sour cream is definitely photoshopped.
Okay, the sour cream does look a little sus.
Yeah. Maybe I need a new Mexican food to, make the background a little bit more spicy, if you will.
You should do that and see if anybody catches on. But you really have to slow cook them, though. Only change it so often to just different backgrounds of Mexican.
Oh yeah.
Well, party people, I think I'm gonna head to dinner. Speaking of
I'm getting
food.
hungry. I do have to say, for the first time in my life, I saw a laser shoot a drone out of the sky, which was really cool. It works.
We were just
At
talking
what
about that.
velocity,
What?
though? What RCS and what velocity? RCS means radar cross section, by the way. It's basically the size of the box that a thing fits in.
So the actual RCS is probably 1.5, so probably like 1.5 meters squared. What the radar saw is probably much smaller just because of the material. So it's probably a very small RCS. But it doesn't matter. The radar is not what was tracking it. It was optical. And the laser beam is, I don't know. It's pretty small, probably no more than 1 inch in diameter. And it's pretty low power. So you have to kind of dwell on the target for a while. And
I was going to ask how long it sat on the target. And then did you just disable it so it was a targeted shot? Or did you just try to cut the damn thing in half?
so again, it depends on the material. And so this wasn't a powerful enough laser where it's just like slice something in half. Essentially, you just laser it until it catches on fire and crashes.
Like burns it.
Is that what you saw?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I couldn't see it with my naked eye because if there's a laser out there, you can't do that. And so we just were looking through a thermal camera, and it's kind of cool because you see the flash from the heat, and then you just see hot bits start to fall off the target. So it's like it's raining heat, and then it just kind of like you see a huge burst, and then I remember specifically seeing a nice clear image of a smoldering, I can't say too much, but a smoldering target on the ground, just like flames shooting up like that. That's pretty fucking awesome.
Dude, that's awesome.
You should share your screen and show the video that I just sent over. I think that's the right one.
Let me see here. Yeah, you can see some video of what I described. Here we go. I can make this. Maybe. Seems very unhappy with me. I click it and nothing happens. I don't know what's going on. Oh, nope. Okay. So this is not the same laser, but whatever, close enough. I think I know that guy. Okay. Yeah, share this correctly. Wait. All right, I'm a Zoom idiot. So bear with me. Screen sharing is disabled.
Oh, I bet.
Jen, you have to do it.
There you go. Yeah, normally I have that set just globally in my Zoom.
Right way. Now Zoom is going to do something funky. I can feel it. I have no idea what's going on. You see the hands?
Yeah.
Is that
do
all
see
you
the
see?
hands.
Yeah, we got the hands.
I see some hands. Oh,
There you go.
Oh.
I know
and
that
was
guy.
fairly targeted.
Little do we know, Jeff is like 4 feet off camera in the background of this video being made.
I'm not.
100%.
He's the one operating the laser.
That was awesome, actually.
So that was a pretty close representation. It's that accurate too. Like you could see Isaac kind of pull the tail fin in, or the tail section, and then as it turned, he kind of moved to something else. Like that. It's pretty realistic. A lot of those laser videos are bullshit that I've seen. That one was pretty real.
In general, and if we're getting into like you're gonna have to kill me if you tell me territory, then just we'll close it out. Are these, like you said, it's an optical sight? Is it seeing things like that are out of the range of human sight, or
Yes.
yeah, significantly? Okay, gotcha. Cool.
It's IR, so yeah, it's just a heat camera, and they have they're huge. So when you look at the apparatus there, I don't know if you notice, like there's a huge circle. That is not the laser. That's the camera.
Yeah.
Find the smallest hole on the front of that thing, and that's your laser. A lot of that, what you're seeing is just for tracking and targeting the laser. The laser is produced somewhere else, and then it's fed to that the beam director / tracker by a fiber optic cable. And so it's
so what do you think we could shoot down if the laser was coming out of the big one?
Anything.
The moon.
That's a heck of a laser. Yeah. And it's pretty wild because you can't just shoot willy-nilly. You have to be super careful. Like even if you have a target, it doesn't mean you can shoot it down, because you have to be aware of what's behind it all the way out into space. And so you you have to know exactly what's in the sky all around you all the time, and the software will tell you if you can fire or not. It doesn't matter if you want to fire, you still have to be allowed to fire depending on what's in the sky.
Wow.
And so we're
So
talking about,
Starlink is fucking this up.
we're talking about like satellites and
Yeah.
and are you okay? So now I'm starting to understand some of the like geospatial, you know, not to like launch us into the conversation again, but what about like you know, like flights, like, you know, passenger jets or even like a space shuttle or something like that? Is all of that data accessible enough to be able to get it kind of in real time, or is that also getting like optically fed in?
So the commercial stuff, so where we were at, there was no commercial flights, problem solved.
Right.
By law, commercial flights have to broadcast ADS-B data, which is easily attained. So that's something you could deal with live. Satellite paths are known. If they exist or not, we know where they are. And so my understanding is, so as an operator, you don't necessarily know, they're not going to tell you why you can't fire. You just know you can't fire.
Gotcha.
Right? Because you're just not going to know why a lot sometimes, right? Because there's so much weird stuff out there that it's like we're not supposed to know it's there, but we have to know that we can't laze.
Everyone has decided, even if this thing is a secret, like you can know something's there so that you don't shoot it down accidentally.
Yeah, but I don't think it tells you what's there. It's just you can't shoot there at this time.
Fair.
Yeah, so it was pretty cool. It was interesting to see. Yeah, it was. I wasn't too sold on the whole laser setups. I'd only heard about them, and I saw some promotional videos that I thought were pretty sketchy looking. And then so seeing it in real life, it was one of those systems. It was a Boeing, and I think I don't know. This is a live stream, but I'm trying to figure out. Like, I don't know anything I can't say, but I still don't know if I should say or not. But yeah, it worked really well. Like it absolutely dead on. Was a moving target. It lased it no problem while it was moving. It was very impressive.
And this is the Boeing system that we saw at what was the military event, the conference?
AUSA. Oh shit! You want to go to a conference?
That's the one.
Oh, if you can get into that. Have you ever seen that show Lord of War?
Yeah.
That movie. And he kind of goes to the conference, and it's like hot chicks and tanks and guns and all that. Right? It's like this international arms dealer conference. It's like that, but there's no booth babes.
Like, that's wild. But they still show up with their toys.
Yeah, it's extremely wild. Like you're in a convention center in Washington, D.C., and there's helicopters, there's an Osprey, there's lasers, there's every variation of AR-15 you can think of. Cables, lots of cables and interconnects, because we need a lot of those these days. The only thing I was told I couldn't take a picture of was a cable. Because it was
what
secret.
Could have possibly been on that cable though? Because I mean, I've seen guns that shoot around corners. The Israelis have, but the cable, what the hell?
Yeah. Yeah, it was funny. They had it out as a sample, and one thing you learn quickly is ask first before you take pictures. And they're like, "No, you can't take a picture of that." I'm like, "Okay," and they explained why. I was like, "All right, whatever, no big deal." But yeah, there was so much wild stuff there. I had no idea what I was getting into. Jen and I went, and yeah, just life-size military equipment that you can kind of like get into and climb on in a convention center. And it's like, here's a booth for, rockets. Here's a booth for mortar rounds. Here's
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I want to hear them hawk some of that shit, like Here's the newest and greatest bunker busting mortar round. You think you can hide? You can't. Right? Or whatever. I want to hear him just like hawk that shit to the nearest interested party.
I didn't see anything like that. Those kind of booths, they just sort of hung back, and I think it sells itself. Like there's only a few interested parties in that.
There was a booth we got kicked out of because we weren't important enough.
Oh,
There was I don't even know where they were from, the military guys. I think Middle Eastern country. Obviously not an enemy Middle Eastern country, but where are they
well, I was
from?
gonna say is Israel probably they're gunsmiths, man. The technology that they use is pretty wild. Like that corner
Yeah.
shot I was telling you about. That's a real gun. It has a breakable
Yeah.
point like a shotgun, except for the chassis breaks over. And it's not meant for loading and unloading. It's actually meant for shooting around the corner.
Shooting
And it
around.
has an optic feeds into the helmet the guy's wearing. And so he just sticks the gun kind of forward like this, breaks it over, and he can look he can look around the corner and fire a ballistic. Like it's just
That's
wild,
pretty
man.
wild. Yeah,
Yeah,
there was
dude.
an entire section of this conference that we couldn't go to because we didn't have the proper clearance. So it was just pretty nuts. Like there's a break where only I don't know what clearance you needed to get in there. I think it said like it wasn't VIP. It was you had to have the need to know to go to this place in the convention. It was a trip.
If you don't already know what's back there, then
Right.
you're not going to find out what's back there today.
Yeah, exactly.
This is the stuff that is going to this is the stuff that melts people. Like this is the stuff that we don't say we have until everyone knows we have it.
Right. Yeah, it was even then they might deny it, but yeah, that absolutely blew my mind. I had a good time there just because I didn't think something like that actually existed. And then you're there, you're like, oh, this happens.
Nuts.
It's a interesting career turn the last few years. All right. I'll stop there.
Hey, do you have to re-up your security clearance like every so often? Do you have to recertify or anything like that?
I think so. I don't have one, so I actually don't know.
Oh, okay.
You do, because you will lose it. It's like if you leave a job, if you have a clearance through a job, and it's not maintained, you do lose it. That is true. I don't know what the time or the process or any of that is.
Yeah.
I've worked with some people who've come from jobs with clearances, and they came with their clearance, but they didn't, do whatever to keep it going, and so it eventually just expired. But there's something to it. I guess I'll probably find out, but I haven't yet.
It says here, a government security clearance requires a periodic reinvestigation every 15 years for a confidential clearance, every 10 years for secret, every 5 years for top secret.
Okay.
And then if anything happens that could put it at risk, you have to report it immediately. And there's other rules.
Yeah, and I think if it's through your employer, which for civilian it probably is. I think once you leave that employer, like you kind of lose your like a sponsorship.
Yeah.
I think the window is even tighter.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that's a whole other level of stuff. I haven't had to deal with that yet.
Let's all leave and become
Ask me
defense
what my
contractors.
clearance is. What's that?
I said, let's all leave and become defense contractors.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword. You have to deal with the government. Don't forget that.
Because they don't pay well.
It's a whole different. Lots of hoops, lots of bureaucracy.
Bureaucracy is insane.
Yeah.
Just wow. I don't even know how to describe it, and it just seems like it gets nothing but worse. It doesn't matter that you're a private company, the government is just going to enforce it on you. So that's the downside for sure. The bureaucracy is insane. Like we have a phrase, it's hurry up and wait, which I think that just describes all of it. It's like,
Which is
Oh, the U.S.
expensive.
Army for sure.
Hurry up and wait it comes with a very big price tag, especially if you're a small company. Because you can't really afford price tags like that. You can't afford to wait. It's all about that speed and rapid revenue and
yeah,
Oh
it's,
yeah.
it's a different world. I don't know.
Wrap
Do
it
you have
up?
any words on that, Jen?
It makes me feel like a Ferrari in a traffic jam. That's the best way. I like to move fast. I like to build systems and organize things just enough to get them flying. And the bureaucracy, while I understand it and I support it and I respect the need for the services like like are required in being NIST compliant and all of that, the space that I love the most is a much faster pace. But at the same time, I know people that love the bureaucratic structure, the slow, predictable space, and maybe someday I'll be into that. But right now, I'm not into it.
Not for me, thanks.
But yeah, the cool toys are cool toys. There's a secondary price to be paid.
All right,
We made
guys,
it, you guys.
let's call it for the night.
All right,
We'll do
y'all.
this again in 2 weeks.
Sounds
Jeff, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
great to see y'all.
And Alex, you're a
Also,
permanent fixture now, right?
Yes. Love it.
Yes.
That's awesome.
I've been as more or less out of town on the job for the last couple of weeks. So, but I will say I'll try to come next time with some code or something, and also ask if anybody else has something they could bring that we could look at. That's always fun.
Yeah, Daryl, Alex. Obviously
thinking
not
about-
IP. Please do not bring work code from any of your jobs. Do.
Which is what I want to bring. I really want to bring work code. I wish I could.
Well, can you
I'm thinking about
change it
taking this
enough?
free. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh no, go for it, Daryl.
I'm thinking about taking this free machine learning course with what you call it, TensorFlow stuff.
TensorFlow.
And so I might have to bring that for like the next time or something.
Yeah, I'd be into that.
Oh,
Yeah, I don't know much about that.
Me neither, and I'm kind of excited to find out. And apparently it's in Python, which is just awful, but that's fine because
oh.
TensorFlow is usually JavaScript.
The language of the machines, Daryl. Get with the time.
Bye, you guys.
That's how they
Bye.
learn. Bye.
Ciao.